If you've ever found yourself choosing between silence and self-respect, if you've ever looked around a room full of familiar faces and still felt completely unseen, then maybe you'll understand why I stood up, smoothed my dress, and walked away from that dinner table like I no longer belonged there. My name is Violet, 39 years old, CEO of an event planning company based in Seattle. Outside of work, I was the hand-picked daughter-in-law in a family where everything revolved around reputation. If you've ever felt like a supporting character in your own story, leave a comment, hit like, share this story, and follow the channel so you don't miss what comes next. That evening, Rome was quieter than I remembered. On the rooftop of Hotel L'Aria, the table sat perfectly centered on a stone terrace, overlooking Piazza Navona. 12 white chairs were arranged under the warm glow of string lights. And there was no 13th. I stood at the edge of the table, my eyes drawn to the empty space like a magnet. No chair, no name card, no explanation. Grant, my husband, stepped beside me, a slight smirk on his lips. "Oops, looks like we miscounted." He said it in that offhand tone people use when the pasta's lukewarm, and the whole table burst into laughter. I nodded, my hand tightening slightly at my hip. Looks like I'm not family. Then I turned and walked away, the click of my heels echoing against the marble like a private reminder. Don't turn back. I didn't cry. Instead, I took the elevator downstairs, walked into the small cafe across the street, ordered an espresso and opened my phone. My fingers tapped directly into the event app, the very one I'd designed for my company, and I logged in using my admin credentials. I had 30 minutes. That's how long it would take for them to realize I wasn't coming back. And it was more than enough time to start taking back control. I'd spent 8 months planning Claudia's birthday week, private dinners, a wine tour in Umbria, a yacht off the coast of Positano. I had signed every contract, fronted every deposit on my company card. I sat there in the cafe's warm light, one hand wrapped around my espresso, the other scrolling through vendor emails. With every cancellation I sent, my chest felt a little lighter. They thought I would endure, again. But I didn't see the point in playing peacemaker anymore, for a family that never truly wanted me in the frame. Around me, diners chatted in Italian, cutlery clinked gently on glass plates, like background music in a movie I wasn't starring in. I watched through the window as candles flickered at a table I'd set without a seat for me. I thought about Claudia, satisfied, walking in with that sapphire ring, large as an olive. About Brooke, Grant's sister, who still called me the event girl instead of my name. I didn't say anything, no need. I just sent a short message to Marco, the restaurant manager. Activate Plan B. Confirm cancellation of financial sponsorship from Elite V. Marco responded with a thumbs-up emoji. I knew he'd handle the rest. I paid for my espresso and stood. The night air tugged gently at my dress, cool and steady like a quiet reminder. Respect isn't something you request, it's something you reclaim. And I hadn't realized. That was only the beginning. I met Grant at a fall fundraiser in Portland when I was 32. I was standing at the bar, having just finished setting the lighting for a pediatric hospital gala. He walked up from behind, placed a glass of Cabernet on the counter, tilted his head. "You're the one who turned a high school gym into Gatsby's mansion?" Shrugged. Eyes still on the VIP checklist on my iPad. "My team did, I just told them where to hang the chandeliers." He laughed, that lazy laugh of someone used to having doors opened. But his eyes? They weren't smug, just curious. A few minutes in, I learned he was the son of Claudia Bennett, the event's top sponsor. "My mom's looking for someone to plan her spring benefit at the church," he said. "I think she just found her answer." "Careful," I said, not looking up. "People like me tend to stick around when we do a good job." I wasn't lying. 2 weeks later, I was in Claudia's office on the top floor of a downtown bank tower. "You're Violet what again?" she asked, barely glancing at the folder. "Violet Thomas, ma'am." She raised an eyebrow, set her pen down. Not many Thomases in Portland finance. I smiled politely. My dad was a mechanic. My mom worked circulation at the public library. I was used to being judged by how I pronounced my name. From there, I planned dozens of events for the Bennetts. I learned they hated strongly scented flowers, never used scented candles, always served fish after meat, and never sat two major donors at the same table. Grant invited me to dinner the following winter. We picked a small Japanese spot with only 10 seats at the counter. I remember how strangely sweet, it felt when he handed me the chopsticks instead of taking his first. Over time, things fell into place. He seemed different from his mother. Quieter, more thoughtful. Never once asked where I went to school. When it got cold, he'd slip my hand into his coat pocket. And I liked the way he murmured my name in the morning before he opened his eyes. Claudia, though, never once looked at me like someone who would stay. At our first formal dinner, right between the steak and the tartane, she said, "You've built your career on your own. That's very American." She said American like it was slightly distasteful, like everyone else in her world had European lineage. I got used to it, the cold smiles, the questions that sounded more like evaluations. "How's your little company doing these days?" The way they ignored me halfway through a sentence. When Grant proposed, I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate either. But that night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was thrilled, but because I could already feel the rules pressing in around me. The wedding was in Santa Fe, a venue I chose for the dry air and golden light. I planned the whole thing, of course I did. Claudia altered the guest list 4 times, cutting all but 3 of my friends. Grant tried to smooth it over. She's just worried. That's how she is. I nodded, but I knew he had never told her no. And that was the part that mattered. After the wedding, I kept running my business. Still planned their events, only now as the daughter-in-law. But the way they looked at me, that never changed. "Violet has such a good eye," Claudia said once to a friend. "It's like having a personal party planner in the family." I smiled, but inside it felt like I was just an employee on an endless contract. I didn't know where work ended and marriage began anymore. But I knew this much. They didn't need me. They needed what I could make. And that's when I started noticing the cracks. Not on the table settings, but in the man who once handed me chopsticks across a winter dinner counter. That morning in Seattle, light rain misted the windows. Just enough to dampen my coat, not enough to bring an umbrella. I was boxing up the last 3 gift sets for an art gallery launch in Fremont, when Grant's phone lit up on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower. The screen glowed. A message preview read, "Can't wait to see you next weekend in Napa. Did you talk to her yet?" The sender, Vanessa Harper. I didn't touch the phone. Just stared. Stood still. My face burned, but inside, I felt strangely cold. Like my body had split in 2 and neither half knew the other. I don't usually check my husband's phone. I didn't even know his passcode because I never needed to. But that morning, the phone was unlocked, and I didn't tell myself to look away. I tapped the message, scrolled up. The older messages were short, but enough. They hadn't just made plans to meet. They had met. Had dinner, spent nights together. They'd already talked about life after the divorce. Then there was a black and white ultrasound image, captioned, "Our baby girl, 4 months left." I sat down, and the wooden chair felt so stiff it was like my spine was pressing straight against the floor. I didn't say a word when Grant came out, hair wet, that faint scent of peppermint body wash trailing behind him. "You packing gift boxes?" he asked. I nodded. "Almost done." I didn't ask who Vanessa was. I didn't need to. I knew. His ex from college. The one Claudia once slipped up and called the one that got away during a family gathering. I closed his phone and placed it back exactly where it was. No tears, no shaking. After breakfast, he left the house. I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and created a new folder in an old directory titled Legal Templates. I named it Backup Personal. Every screenshot, every conversation, every detail went in there. I marked it confidential, then uploaded it to a private cloud account. By noon, I was at the client meeting as scheduled, took photos of the wedding cake, tested the lighting, reviewed color swatches. No one noticed anything different. But I knew. Once you realize what someone is capable of hiding, everything else becomes easier to see. That evening, Grant texted saying he had to stay late for a meeting with partners from Denver. I replied with just 2 words. Okay, drive safe. I laid back on the sofa, phone in hand, reopened the thread with Vanessa. One message stood out. She seems smart. You need to handle this gently. I let out a quiet laugh, dry and hollow. And then I wondered, what did gently mean to them? Quiet retreat? Stepping aside? Not making noise? If that's what they expected, they picked the wrong woman. I closed my eyes, my head resting against the couch. I no longer saw the ultrasound or the texts. Only one feeling remained. Like I was finally seeing everything clearly, stripped of illusion. Grant had booked our flights to Rome. The whole family would be going to celebrate Claudia's birthday in Italy, just as planned. I'd still go. But not for them anymore. Because I had a different purpose now. And I knew the worst part hadn't even started. The flight from Seattle to Rome took almost 11 hours, but I didn't sleep. I stared out the window most of the night, watching city lights drift by like faint orange scratches across a black canvas. Grant slept soundly beside me, arms folded across his chest, like he was trying to hold himself together. When we landed at Fiumicino Airport, I knew every next step by heart. I'd managed hundreds of events. This wasn't any different. Transportation, hotel, schedule, menus, even the floral details on the dinner table, all arranged by me. Claudia was the first to step out of the van. She glanced at the row of parked Mercedes and frowned. I thought I requested Maybachs. I opened the door for her, voice steady. Rome has limited availability during the holidays. This is the diplomatic fleet provider. She didn't respond. Just leaned toward Richard, her husband, and muttered something softly. I caught one word, temporary. I hauled my suitcase up to the hotel suite I had personally reserved. Corner room, balcony overlooking Piazza Navona, lavender trellises hanging above antique tiles. I thought it might please Claudia. When she walked in, she only said, "Oh, it's modern." Then she dropped her suitcase and said nothing else. For the next 3 days, the pattern became obvious. No breakfast invites. Culture tour? They left before I woke up. The lunch in Trastevere? I found out through their Instagram post. Captioned, Family Day. I saw it while selecting table linens for the dinner. Everyone was smiling. Grant sat beside Brooke, Claudia in the center, Prosecco in hand. Me? Not tagged, not mentioned, not there. That evening, I asked Grant, "Where were you all day?" "Oh, Mom wanted to take the family to that cannelloni place she likes. It was spontaneous." "The family?" "I mean, just everyone. You were busy meeting with the restaurant, right?" I nodded. But deep down, I knew it wasn't forgetfulness. It was exclusion. It kept going. Family meetings I wasn't invited to. Dinner reservations changed without notice. The custom menu Claudia wanted updated, she sent it directly to the restaurant's assistant, bypassing me. I started taking notes, not for court, just to remember. On the 4th night, I returned to the room and found a handwritten note on the desk. Grant's handwriting. "Out with Tom and Chad. Back late. Text you after." I stared at it for a while, not because of what it said, but how it said it. No question mark, no greeting, nothing that made me feel like I existed in his day. I flipped on the light, opened my laptop, pulled up every vendor contract. Everything was still in my name. They could remove me from dinner, from photos, from morning hugs. But they couldn't erase me from this. I just hadn't said anything yet. Then one morning, I noticed Grant's leather briefcase slightly ajar on the chair. Inside, no business papers. Just a thick printout stamped with a lawyer's letterhead. The title said it all. Separation Proposal Draft. I knew then it was my turn to write the script. And this time, the lead wouldn't be missing her seat. I didn't open the file right away. The leather case sat silently on the chair like someone who had just insulted you and walked out. I poured a glass of water, stood there, drank half, then came back and unzipped it. Inside, a neat stack about 20 pages. The first page read, Separation Proposal, Confidential Draft. I read every line. Cold, efficient, not one emotional word. Asset division, NDA terms, financial breakdown. And the line, mutual agreement due to irreconcilable differences, no dispute. At the end, the lawyer's name, definitely not mine, of course. In the middle of the stack, there was a document titled, Suggested Talking Points for Family Dinner. I skimmed through. My heart didn't race, didn't sink. It felt like reading a grocery list. Clear, soulless, unworthy of reaction. I picked up my phone, snapped photos of every page, then slipped the papers back into the briefcase, zipped it shut. Left everything exactly where it was. I wanted him to think I hadn't seen a thing. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring out the hotel window. Rome in late autumn looked like it had been dusted with faded gold. Down below, people rode bikes, walked dogs, lived their own lives. I took a deep breath. No stinging in my eyes. Oh, no tightness in my chest. What bothered me most wasn't that Grant planned to leave me. It was how he, and his family, planned to rewrite the story. Quietly erase me from the frame. Decide the timing, the tone, and the ending on their own. Not this time. I started moving. Every day, I made excuses to leave the hotel early, checking on the restaurant, meeting the decor team, talking to the printer. In truth, I was back in my room, downloading every contract, email, and deposit receipt. Every single one was under my name or my company's. I also re-successed the shared email once used with Claudia's assistant. In a carelessly undeleted folder, I found a scanned, handwritten note. Once things with Violet are finalized, Vanessa can be officially included in family events. This needs to be clear. I stared at that line for a long while. Not angry, just felt like hearing a door shut, quiet, but final. I named the new folder, For Attorney, Contingency. I didn't send it to the lawyer yet. I had one task left, finish Claudia's birthday. Strangely, I still felt professional. I couldn't walk away from it all, even if they had walked away from me. I wanted them to look back at the last event I ever did for them and know they had nothing to critique, except themselves. I did the final menu check, confirmed seating, adjusted the lighting, sent thank yous to every vendor. I put on my coat, left the hotel that afternoon, guest list in hand. That evening, Grant didn't ask where I'd been. Didn't look me in the eye during the family lounge snack. He looked rehearsed, like an actor waiting for his cue, and I figured the script was already memorized. I returned to my room, shut the door, and played soft music in the bathroom. Under the warm lights, I noticed a few silver strands near my roots. I smiled faintly. No one ever called me weak. They just forgot that I knew how to stay silent at the right moment. I spritzed my perfume, sat on the bed, picked up my phone. The first message I sent was to Marco, the manager at Aroma, the rooftop restaurant. Confirm the financial sponsor cancellation clause. Keep this quiet. I'll signal you on the day of. I set the phone down, leaned back. I didn't need to ruin their script. I just had to change the ending. The morning of Claudia's birthday began with sunlight glinting off the bathroom mirror and a call from the hotel front desk. They reminded me pickup was at 9 a.m. sharp for the whole family. I was still the only one who knew the full itinerary. Grant was still asleep. I slipped onto the balcony, coffee and planner in hand. Rome was misty, the city sounds distant. like the rustling of curtains before a show. I opened the itinerary app and did one final run-through. Art tour at Borghese, lunch at a vineyard outside the city, and finally, dinner, the crown jewel of the entire trip. Aroma had been triple-checked. Marco knew exactly what signal I'd send if payment terms were to change. Every flower, wine glass, and porcelain plate carried my touch, quietly but unmistakably. Around noon, I returned to the hotel to change. As I passed the concierge desk, I heard a familiar voice from behind the divider. "No, she won't stay for dinner. It's a family matter. Already agreed with my son." Claudia's voice. Calm. Clear. I froze. Tourists next to me chatted in French, dragging wheeled suitcases, but I heard only one thing. I had been officially excluded. Not a mistake, not a missing seat. Deliberate. I turned away, unhurried. Returned to my room, locked the door, sat on the bed. Pulled out my phone. In drafts, the message was ready. "Marco, activate the plan. Confirm all payments will not go through Elite V. Final signal coming once I leave." I didn't send it yet. A few more hours. I changed into the dress I had picked myself, a sea glass blue with a square neckline and mid-sleeves, the suede beige heels I wore to Brooke's wedding. When I looked in the mirror, I thought, maybe I hadn't changed much, just learned to see others' eyes for what they really meant. Before leaving the room, I tucked a small USB into my clutch, every piece of evidence inside, wire transfers, signed contracts, emails, and even Claudia's scanned note. If you've ever stayed silent because no one believed you, or got blamed just for telling the truth, leave a comment. Share this story if you think someone needs to hear it. We don't need to make a scene, but that doesn't mean we have to keep taking it. The hotel lobby was full. Claudia wore a deep violet silk dress. Her pearl necklace strung like each bead marked a triumph in her life. Brooke adjusted her husband's boutonniere. Grant looked at his phone, didn't speak to me. "Let's go," Claudia said, eyes gliding past me like I was an extra hired last minute. In the car, no one mentioned me. No one asked where I'd sit. While at the restaurant, everyone followed the plan. Each person, each pair, each carefully averted gaze. I entered last, pausing at the door, taking in the scene I had built myself. Candlelight, ivory linens, Claudia's favorite peonies, and of course, 12 chairs. I didn't touch a thing. I didn't insert myself. Just stood there and watched. Then I turned. No words. My phone buzzed gently in my palm. I typed, "Marco, it's time." I walked out of the restaurant, my hands lighter than when they were empty. And deep down, I knew the final act hadn't started. But I was ready to pull the curtain. I picked a window seat at the cafe across from Aroma. A hot espresso arrived, served with a tiny silver spoon. Across the street, golden light poured down from the rooftop balcony. The birthday dinner began, right on schedule. I sipped slowly, opened my phone. Every contract I'd signed with the restaurant, the vendors, was right there. Each file stamped, paid, my name at the top. All awaiting my next move, cancel or let it run. I didn't stay quiet. Every command was sent. Marco responded with a short, "Oh." Dinner would continue until the check arrived. I set my cup down, stood, smoothed my dress. The street lamp outside cast a warm glow on the edge of my heels as I crossed the road. I entered through the staff entrance, the same one I used 3 days ago to confirm the seating chart. Marco was waiting just inside. He tilted his head and asked softly, "Ready?" I nodded. "Give me 5 minutes. I want to see them one last time." He guided me to a hallway near the kitchen, where I could see the entire dining room. The space sparkled, full of charm. Old stone walls, white candles, deep red wine. Everyone was laughing, Brooke raising a toast to Claudia, Grant leaning over to pour for Richard. I saw the empty seat, the one that was mine. And I saw Claudia's self-satisfied smile. Marco approached the table, whispered something to Richard, His brow furrowed. He reached for his wallet. I watched Marco shake his head and hand over the tablet. It took exactly 15 seconds for every expression at that table to change. Brooke glanced around, lips pressed tight. Claudia set her knife and fork down, back straight, but her eyes narrowing. Grant was already on his phone. And I guessed the text would arrive any second. And then it came. Violet, what the hell are you doing? Mom's freaking out. Call me back now. We need to talk. Now. I didn't respond. I walked straight through the hallway, right into the center of the room, where every stare seemed to inhale at once. Claudia shot up, her chair scraping backward. You dare? I calmly set my purse on the table, pulled out the USB drive. All the paperwork is right here. Deposits, payments, cancellations. Nothing is under your name. Grant stood up too. You didn't have to do this. I looked him in the eye. No one had to exclude me from this dinner, but you all did. Claudia yanked her napkin from her lap, her voice sharp as shattered glass. You're humiliating us in public. I gave a small smile. No, this is a family event I was just erased from. I think I have the right to reclaim what was mine. I turned, pulled out my phone and sent one final message to Marco. I'm leaving, cancel full payment. Any response should go to the attorney listed in the file. I walked out the front door, the sound of my heels steady and loud. Behind me the chaos began, clattering cutlery, calls for staff, Richard's voice rising. I didn't look back. Outside, Rome was cool, the air fresh like after a rain. I paused at the steps and took a breath. I've organized hundreds of events, but maybe this was the first one where everything went exactly according to plan. And the best part? It was still ahead. I exited through the back of the restaurant, where the light was dimmer and the noise inside faded to a distant blur. A young server bowed slightly. I nodded without a word. The walk back to the hotel took nearly 10 minutes. I didn't rush. My shoes pinched slightly at the heel, but I didn't take them off. Maybe that bit of discomfort reminded me I was still here. Awake, in control, and calm. Back in the room, I washed my hands, tied my hair up, and opened my laptop. Grant's calls started coming in. I flipped the phone face down. I logged into the company's payment management system. The lunch in Castelli Romani, the private Vatican tour, the Positano yacht cruise. Each deposit, one by one, I canceled. Funds returned to my company account within minutes. A message from the hotel arrived. Mrs. Bennett just left the restaurant and requested a room change, but the reservation account has been canceled. I replied, I'm no longer responsible for her charges. Please contact the guest directly. That's when I finally picked up my phone. Nearly 30 messages. First came the usual. Call me back. This is going to ruin everything. And shorter ones. You're insane. Mom's livid. Everyone's watching. I skimmed through, not one apology, not one line acknowledging the cause, just panic over public embarrassment. Then came a knock. I checked the monitor. Hotel staff. He handed me an envelope, the final dinner invoice. Claudia hadn't paid. They still assumed I'd clean up the rest. I signed at the bottom and wrote one line by hand. The payer is no longer affiliated with this event. And sent it back. I opened the balcony door, leaned on the railing. Across the street, the restaurant lights had dimmed. I thought of Claudia's frozen face when she realized no one had her back anymore. Of Brooke, always avoiding my eyes. Of Grant, not just absent by my side, but now fully on the other side. I pulled out my phone and sent one last email to my attorney. All materials are organized and backed up. When they react, proceed as discussed. I walked back in, took off my heels, hung my dress, and washed my face with cool water. In the mirror, I looked tired, but not hollow. Just someone who had finally cleaned a room that had gone untouched for far too long. I set my alarm for 7 a.m. My flight back to Seattle had been booked last week, business class, using reward points I had racked up booking trips for the Bennett family. A quiet kind of balance. I turned off the lights. And right before I fell asleep, I knew for certain I hadn't destroyed a family. I had simply pulled back the curtain on a stage that was never real. And one final scene was still left to play. 1 week after returning to Seattle, I was sitting on the floor unpacking old books when the doorbell rang. I wasn't surprised. Grant had sent over 20 messages since I landed. Not one said, "Sorry," but every single one asked for something. I got up, didn't change out of my wrinkled sweater, didn't fix my lipstick. I opened the door. He stood there, thick coat, slightly messy hair, leather shoes still muddy. His eyes looked tired but lacked the confidence they once had. "You moved back here?" He glanced around, trying to sound familiar. "This is mine. I never really left." "Violet, that night in Rome." "Wasn't about that night," I cut in. "It was about something you started long before. I just chose the right time to stop it." He exhaled, gaze dropping. "The SEC is investigating my dad's investment fund. 2 directors already resigned. Mom had to sell her ceramic collection." I nodded, expressionless. "And what does that have to do with me?" "We're still married. If I get sued, you—" "No." I sat down, calm like I was reviewing a checklist. "I have enough proof that you deliberately concealed finances and transferred assets outside my oversight. My lawyer calls it intent to defraud during divorce proceedings." Grant sat across from me, head lowered like a student held after class. "I didn't think it would go this far." "You thought I'd stay quiet?" He didn't answer. I went to the kitchen, poured some water. When I came back, he was still sitting there, frozen. "How's Vanessa?" I asked, like commenting on the weather. He looked up, hesitant. "Due in 4 months. She's in San Jose with her parents." "Does she know yet?" "How about you?" "No." "About your family's finances. About you." For the first time in the conversation, Grant looked truly lost. He didn't know. And I guessed Vanessa didn't either. I handed him an envelope. Inside was a copy of the divorce agreement. "Asset division by law. No disputes, no countersuits. I keep what I had before the marriage, the rest, you keep." He looked at me. "Violet, what do you want from me?" "Nothing." I leaned against the table. "Not money, not reputation. I just need you to understand, I was never a decoration for the party you and your mother put on." He nodded slowly, then lowered his head. "I did love you, you know that." "Maybe, but not enough to stand by me when it mattered." I walked him to the door. Outside, Seattle was cold and damp, the air a mix of wet grass and exhaust. He turned back one last time. "If you need anything." "I need quiet." I shut the door and slid the bolt. Wind crept through the crack in the window. I sat back on the floor, flipping through books. One old copy, its spine worn, dropped a sticky note I'd once written. "Silence isn't weakness, it's how we prepare to begin again." And I knew the next chapter was already waiting. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of the Capella Hotel in Singapore, clipboard in hand, earpiece in place. An international architecture summit was underway. Guests from 18 countries, 3 receptions, 2 stages, and 1 lead coordinator, me. The white linen dress I wore felt better than any blazer I'd ever put on while working for Grant's family. And no one here called me the wife of, or the in-house planner. I was Violet Thomas. Official, independent. No one ushered me into boardrooms anymore. After Rome, I returned to Seattle, sold my shares in the old company to my former partner. With that money, I opened a boutique agency focused on international events for independent clients. No flash, no social climbing guest lists. I picked the clients. I chose the projects. And for the first time in years, I chose myself. Claudia never contacted me again, except through an assistant's email suggesting I bid on a charity gala. I replied with just 2 lines. "My calendar is full through the end of the year. I hope you find someone aligned with your family's values." Book, according to a friend in the industry, was now separated. Vanessa gave birth to a baby girl, and Grant's name wasn't on the birth certificate. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel sorry, just distant. As if I'd once lived in a completely different climate, and now I'd moved somewhere with just the right amount of sun. That evening in Singapore, once everything had settled, I sat alone on the rooftop balcony and ordered a Negroni. A Dutch couple was taking wedding photos nearby. The bride adjusted her hair, the groom wiped her forehead with a cloth. I watched them for a few seconds, then looked away, feeling nothing but peace. There was a time I believed recognition had to be given, that I had to prove I was worthy of staying, but no. My existence never needed anyone's permission. I didn't win against anyone in this story. I simply refused to let anyone else define how it would end. I don't know where you're listening from, in your car, right before bed, or on a day when you need a story to help you stand back up. Maybe you've also sat at a table where no seat was meant for you. Maybe you're still waiting for someone to really see you for who you are. If that's the case, I hope you know you're not alone. Leave a comment. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you want to hear more honest journeys like this one, don't forget to follow the channel. The next story might be the one you've been waiting for. Violet's story isn't just about elegant revenge, it's about waking up and rising after being quietly dismissed. In a world where women are often sidelined by legacy, family names, or unspoken rules, she reminds us, you don't need anyone's approval to prove your worth. Sometimes, walking away from the table where no chair was ever saved for you is how you start building your own.